When you trust God with all your heart, something remarkable begins to happen. You stop carrying the weight of every problem on your own shoulders, and you start realizing that you were never meant to walk this path alone. Faith doesn't mean you will always understand how God is working or why certain doors close while others open. But it does mean you can rest in the assurance that His plans are better than anything you could ever imagine. When you trust Him, even in moments that feel like defeat, He is working behind the scenes, arranging circumstances and preparing blessings that you never saw coming. You may be praying for one specific answer, but God may be preparing something far greater than you asked. Sometimes the blessing isn't just in what He gives, but in what He teaches you as you wait. He uses every setback to strengthen you, every disappointment to deepen your dependence on Him. Trusting God isn't always easy. It requires surrender, letting go of the need to control outcomes, and releasing the fear that things won't work out. But the promise is that if you lean not on your own understanding, He will direct your path. He will lead you to places you could never reach on your own strength. The Bible tells us that all things work together for good to those who love God. That means the pain, the waiting, the unanswered questions are not wasted. They are all part of a story He is weaving together for your good and His glory. When you trust God, you find peace that doesn't make sense to the world. You discover joy in the middle of trials and hope in the darkest nights. You begin to notice the little miracles, doors that open when you least expect them, strength that shows up right when you're about to give up, relationships restored, needs provided. These are the unexpected blessings that flow from a heart fully surrendered to Him. Billy Graham often reminded us that faith is not about seeing every step ahead. It is about knowing the one who holds the future and believing that He is faithful. Even when you don't see the answer right away, even when you feel overlooked or forgotten, God sees you. He hears every prayer, and He has never failed to keep a promise. So today, let your trust be bigger than your fear. Choose to believe that God is able to do exceedingly and abundantly above all you can ask or think. Keep moving forward in faith, because when you trust Him, He will surprise you with blessings that are far beyond anything you dreamed possible. Trusting God requires surrender, and surrender is one of the hardest lessons any of us can learn. It goes against our human nature to let go. We are taught from an early age to fight for control, to plan every detail, to work harder so that nothing slips through our fingers. But there comes a time when all the planning, all the striving, and all the worrying leave us exhausted and empty. That is the moment when God quietly invites us to release our grip and place our trust in Him completely. When you surrender, you are not giving up or resigning yourself to defeat. You are choosing to lay down the burden you were never meant to carry alone. You are saying, God, I don't have to understand everything to trust You with everything. That is where real faith begins. Not in having all the answers, but in knowing the one who does. Surrender means admitting that your own understanding is limited. You may think you know the best path, the right timing, or the perfect solution, but God sees the entire picture from beginning to end. He knows where each road leads, and He knows which opportunities will grow you and which ones will ultimately harm you. When you surrender your plans, you make space for His perfect plans to unfold. It takes courage to trust God this way because it means acknowledging that you are not in control. The truth is, you never really were. You can work hard and make wise choices, but there will always be circumstances beyond your reach. Illness can come without warning. People can disappoint you. Doors can close suddenly. Yet when your trust is anchored in God instead of your own efforts, you can face uncertainty with a quiet confidence that He will sustain you no matter what happens. Surrender also means letting go of the need to rush ahead. We often want instant answers and immediate solutions. But God's timing is rarely our timing. He is not limited by our schedules or our expectations. Sometimes He will ask you to wait longer than you thought you could bear, not because He is withholding good things, but because He is preparing your heart to receive them. In that waiting, He teaches you patience, deepens your faith, and strips away any illusion that you can do this life on your own. When you finally surrender, you discover a peace that cannot be explained. You feel lighter because you no longer have to pretend to have it all together. You can breathe again because you know that the outcome doesn't rest on your shoulders. God is carrying it. You can trust that He is working all things together for your good, even when it doesn't look the way you hoped. This is why surrender is not weakness. It is the ultimate expression of strength. Choosing to trust the one who never fails. It is standing in faith, even when the ground beneath you feels unsteady, because you know He will never let you fall. When you surrender control, you open your heart to receive blessings you could never have orchestrated on your own. You give God room to move in ways that surprise you and remind you of His goodness. No matter what you're facing today, you can decide to lay it down at His feet. You can trust Him with your dreams, your disappointments, your fears, and your future. He is able to do exceedingly and abundantly above all you can ask or imagine. When you surrender, you will find that His plans are always worth the wait, and His blessings will come in ways you never expected. God works behind the scenes in ways we can't always see or understand. So often we look at our circumstances and assume that nothing is happening. We pray and wait, and when we don't see immediate results, doubt begins to creep in. But God is never inactive. He is never ignoring you or forgetting what you've asked. Even in the silence, He is arranging details with a wisdom far beyond what you can comprehend. Think about how many times in your life something seemed to come together by chance. Maybe you met the right person at exactly the right time, or an opportunity appeared just when you were ready to give up. You might have called it coincidence back then, but when you look back through the eyes of faith, you realize those moments were not accidents. They were God's fingerprints. He was working quietly, orchestrating people, circumstances, and timing so that His purposes would be fulfilled in your life. Trusting that God is working behind the scenes means believing that your prayers set things in motion even if you can't see the progress yet. When you pray, it is not just empty words drifting into space. Your prayers are heard by the one who holds the universe together. He listens carefully to every word you whisper in faith, every tear you shed when you feel overwhelmed, every longing you carry in your heart. He stores those prayers and moves at the appointed time to bring His answers. Sometimes God protects you by closing a door you desperately wanted to walk through. You might feel disappointed or even abandoned in those moments, but if you could see the whole picture, you would thank Him for what didn't happen. He knows the outcome of every choice and every path. When He redirects you, it's not because He wants to deny you good things. It's because He wants to give you His best. Other times, God allows delays because He is preparing something far greater than you can imagine. What looks like inactivity is often His preparation. He might be working on someone else's heart to bring reconciliation. He might be developing your character so you can handle the blessing when it comes. He might be arranging circumstances in a way that will make His provision undeniable. While you're waiting, He's lining up the resources, the people, and the perfect timing so that when the door opens, everything will fall into place. This is why you can have peace even in uncertainty. You don't have to see the full plan to trust that God has won. You don't have to feel progress to know He is working. You don't have to rely on your limited understanding when you serve a limitless God. His ways are higher, His thoughts are wiser, and His timing is perfect. The Bible reminds us that God is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine. That means He is not bound by your expectations or limited by your resources. What you see as impossible is simple for Him. What you think is delayed is often right on schedule according to His purpose. Even when you feel hidden or forgotten, He sees you. Even when you feel like nothing is happening, He is working behind the scenes to bring everything together for your good. So when you're tempted to give up because you can't see the evidence of His hand, remind yourself that God has never stopped being faithful. He has never stopped caring about your needs. And He has never stopped working on your behalf. All you have to do is keep trusting, keep believing, and keep surrendering. At the right moment, He will reveal what He has been preparing all along. Waiting is never easy. It goes against everything in us that wants answers right now. We live in a world that moves fast, where information is instant and patience is often in short supply. But when it comes to trusting God, Waiting is not just something we must endure, it's something He uses to shape us. Waiting is one of His most effective tools to strengthen our faith, build our character, and teach us to rely fully on Him. When you're in a season of waiting, it can feel like nothing is happening. You may wonder if God has forgotten you or if your prayers have somehow been lost. You might look around and see other people moving forward while you feel stuck in the same place. But waiting is never wasted when it's in God's hands. He uses those hidden seasons to prepare you for the blessings He plans to bring. Sometimes we think we are ready for what we've been praying for, but God sees the parts of us that still need healing, growth, or maturity. Maybe you're asking for a promotion, a relationship, or a breakthrough, but if He gave it to you before you were ready, it might become more of a burden than a blessing. Waiting gives you time to develop the strength, humility, and wisdom to handle what's coming. In the Bible, we see countless examples of how God used waiting to prepare His people. Joseph spent years in prison before he was promoted to lead Egypt. David was anointed king as a young man, but waited many years before he actually sat on the throne. Even Jesus waited until the appointed time to begin His ministry. Each of them learned to trust God's timing rather than rush ahead in their own strength. Their seasons of waiting built unshakable faith that could stand up to any challenge. While you wait, God often reveals areas where you've been relying on yourself instead of Him. When you feel powerless to change your situation, you have no choice but to lean on His power. That's when faith becomes real, not as a comforting idea, but as your lifeline. You start to see that His strength really is made perfect in your weakness. Waiting also teaches you gratitude. When the answer finally comes, you appreciate it more deeply because you know how long you waited and how much you depended on God to bring it about. What once seemed like a delay becomes a testimony of His faithfulness. You can look back and say, He did it before, He will do it again. That gratitude fuels even greater trust in the seasons ahead. One of the hardest parts of waiting is fighting off discouragement. The enemy loves to whisper lies that say God doesn't care or that your situation will never change. But the truth is that God is always working, even when you can't see it. He promises that those who wait on Him will renew their strength. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not faint. This isn't just a poetic idea. It's a promise you can stand on. So if you find yourself in a season of waiting today, remember that God is not punishing you. He is preparing you. He is building something strong inside you that could never be developed any other way. Don't waste this time wishing it away. Use it to draw closer to Him, to deepen your faith, and to learn to trust His heart even when His hand seems hidden. When the waiting is over and the blessing arrives, you will understand why it had to happen this way. Peace that comes through trust is unlike anything this world can offer. It doesn't depend on having all the answers or seeing everything work out exactly the way you planned. Instead, it flows from a deep assurance that no matter what happens, God is still in control. When you truly trust Him, you discover a calm that remains steady even when circumstances are swirling in chaos around you. Most people search for peace by trying to control everything. They think if they can just organize every detail, anticipate every problem, and avoid every risk, then they will finally feel secure. But no matter how hard you try to manage life on your own, there will always be something you can't predict or prevent. That's why so many people end up anxious, frustrated, and exhausted, because lasting peace cannot be built on shaky foundations. It only comes when you release control and trust the One who never fails. When you trust God fully, you don't have to fear the unknown. You can look ahead without dread because you know He goes before you. You can rest in the promise that He is working all things together for your good. Even when you can't see how, that doesn't mean you won't have moments of uncertainty or seasons of waiting. But it does mean you won't be alone in those moments. God's presence becomes your anchor, steadying your heart when fear tries to rise up. There is a powerful scripture that says, "You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast, because they trust in you." That is the secret. Fixing your mind on Him rather than your problems. When you focus only on what is going wrong or what might happen, fear grows bigger and peace grows smaller. But when you choose to lift your eyes and remember who God is, His faithfulness, His power, His love, you find that peace returns, no matter how uncertain things seem. This peace doesn't mean you stop caring or stop taking action. It means you learn to do what you can and trust God with what you can't. You bring your concerns to Him in prayer instead of carrying them alone. You surrender your outcomes instead of trying to force them. And in that surrender, you find a freedom that is hard to describe. You stop feeling like you must hold the world together and start realizing it was never your job to begin with. When you trust God, you also begin to see your struggles differently. Instead of viewing every difficulty as a threat, you start to recognize them as opportunities for God to show His power. Instead of letting fear control you, you choose faith. Even when circumstances don't change right away, you can have peace because you know God is with you in the middle of it. His presence is enough. His promises are sure. This peace is what sets you apart in a world that thrives on worry. People will notice there is something different about you. They will see that while others are overwhelmed, you remain steady. While others panic, you find reasons to hope. That quiet confidence becomes a powerful testimony to God's goodness. So wherever you are today, whether you're facing decisions you don't know how to make, problems you don't know how to solve, or waiting for answers you can't yet see, choose to trust. Take a deep breath and remind yourself that God is still on the throne. He has not forgotten you. He has not left you. And as you trust Him more, you will experience a peace that doesn't make sense to the world, but will guard your heart and mind every single day. Trusting God positions you to receive blessings you never anticipated, and these unexpected blessings often arrive exactly when you need them most. Sometimes we picture God's provision as predictable or ordinary, but He delights in surprising His children. When you walk by faith instead of sight, you open yourself up to experience His goodness in ways that far exceed what you imagined. There are moments when you feel as if nothing is moving forward, as if your prayers have hit a ceiling and fallen back down. You look around, and it seems like everyone else is being blessed while you are overlooked. It's in these moments of waiting when you remain faithful and trust that God is still working, that He often brings a breakthrough you didn't see coming. One phone call can change everything. One opportunity can open a door you never knew existed. One divine connection can restore what was lost or bring provision you never expected. The Bible is filled with examples of God blessing people in surprising ways. Think about the widow who had nothing left but a little oil and flour, and how God multiplied it so her family never ran out. Or Ruth, who faithfully gleaned in the fields, not knowing she would be led straight into a place of redemption and a future she never dared to dream about. Each story reminds us that God can take ordinary circumstances and transform them into something miraculous when we trust Him. When you trust God, you also begin to see His blessings more clearly. Sometimes the blessing isn't in the sudden miracle, but in the slow unfolding of His faithfulness. Maybe you prayed for financial provision, and instead of an instant windfall, He gave you unexpected opportunities to work, save, and grow. Maybe you asked for a relationship to be restored, and over time, He softened hearts and built something stronger than before. Even the strength you find in hard seasons is a blessing that prepares you for the next chapter. It's important to remember that God's blessings don't always look the way we expect. We think in terms of comfort, ease, and quick solutions, but He thinks in terms of transformation, purpose, and eternity. Sometimes the greatest blessing comes wrapped in something that doesn't feel like a gift at all, like a closed door that steers you to a better path, or a delay that saves you from settling for less than His best. What feels like a setback can become the very thing God uses to position you for something greater. Trusting God means believing that He knows how and when to deliver exactly what you need. His timing is perfect, even when it doesn't match your own. He sees every detail, every obstacle, and every desire of your heart. He is never late, and He never forgets His promises. When you trust Him, you can wake up each day with expectation, knowing that He can pour out favor and provision in ways that will leave you amazed. Living with that kind of faith changes your perspective. Instead of dreading the unknown, you start to see each day as an opportunity to watch God move. You begin to look for the small signs of His goodness, whether it's an encouraging word from a friend, an open door you didn't expect, or the peace that fills you even when nothing around you makes sense. Each of these is evidence that God is working and that blessings are on the way. If you are in a season where you're waiting for God to answer, don't lose hope. Keep trusting, keep believing, and keep your heart open to the possibility that He will surprise you. The blessing you've been praying for may not look exactly the way you pictured it, but it will be exactly what you need. And when it comes, you will know it was His hand that provided it. God is faithful to His promises, even when everything around you seems to say otherwise. This truth is something you have to hold on to, especially in the seasons when doubt creeps in and the waiting feels endless. Faithfulness is not just something God does, it is who He is. He cannot lie, He cannot fail, and He cannot break His word. Every promise He has made will come to pass in His perfect timing. It's easy to trust God when you see immediate results. When you pray and quickly see an answer, your faith feels strong and unshakable. But faith is proven in the times when you don't see anything happening. When you've prayed the same prayer over and over, and all you hear is silence, that is when trust goes deeper than feelings. That is when you have to remind yourself that God's character doesn't change just because your circumstances have. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. The same God who parted the Red Sea, who fed thousands with a few loaves and fish, who raised the dead and healed the sick, is the God who is with you right now. He hasn't lost His power. He hasn't stopped being good. And He hasn't overlooked you. He sees you. He knows exactly what you need. Sometimes His faithfulness looks like protection when you don't even realize you're in danger. Other times it looks like provision that arrives at just the right moment. And often it looks like strength to endure when you thought you couldn't take another step. Even the fact that you're still standing today is evidence of His faithfulness carrying you through every trial you've faced. One of the most beautiful things about trusting God is that it frees you from the burden of trying to figure everything out on your own. When you know He is faithful, you don't have to keep asking, how is this going to work? Or, what if nothing changes? Instead, you can rest in the assurance that if He said it, He will do it. You can face uncertainty with confidence because your hope is anchored in something unshakable. God has a perfect track record. He has never once broken a promise. The Bible says that not one word of all His good promises has ever failed. That means you can stand on His word when everything else feels unstable. If He has promised to be with you, He will never leave you. If He has promised to provide, He will supply all your needs. If He has promised to guide you, He will make your path straight. It doesn't mean the journey will always be easy or that the answers will always come quickly. But it does mean you will never have to walk through anything alone. He will be with you in the highs and the lows, the victories and the valleys. His faithfulness isn't dependent on your faithfulness. Even when you feel weak or unsure, He remains steady. Holding on to His promises requires courage. It means choosing to believe what He has spoken over what you see. It means waking up each day and saying, God, I trust You, even when I don't understand. That kind of trust pleases His heart and opens the way for His blessings to flow into your life. So wherever you are today, whether you are celebrating answered prayers or still waiting for breakthrough, remember this: God is faithful. His promises are true. He has not brought you this far to leave you now. And in the end, you will look back and see how every step, every tear, and every prayer was part of a bigger story of His goodness in your life. God is faithful to His promises, even when everything around you seems to say otherwise. This truth is something you have to hold on to, especially in the seasons when doubt creeps in and the waiting feels endless. Faithfulness is not just something God does, it is who He is. He cannot lie, He cannot fail, and He cannot break His word. Every promise He has made will come to pass in His perfect timing. It's easy to trust God when you see immediate results. When you pray and quickly see an answer, your faith feels strong and unshakable. But faith is proven in the times when you don't see anything happening. When you've prayed the same prayer over and over, and all you hear is silence, that is when trust goes deeper than feelings. That is when you have to remind yourself that God's character doesn't change just because your circumstances have. He is the same yesterday, today, and forever. The same God who parted the Red Sea, who fed thousands with a few loaves and fish, who raised the dead and healed the sick, is the God who is with you right now. He hasn't lost his power. He hasn't stopped being good, and he hasn't overlooked you. He sees you. He knows exactly what you need. Sometimes his faithfulness looks like protection when you don't even realize you're in danger. Other times it looks like provision that arrives at just the right moment. And often it looks like strength to endure when you thought you couldn't take another step. Even the fact that you're still standing today is evidence of his faithfulness carrying you through every trial you've faced. One of the most beautiful things about trusting God is that it frees you from the burden of trying to figure everything out on your own. When you know he is faithful, you don't have to keep asking, how is this going to work? Or what if nothing changes? Instead, you can rest in the assurance that if he said it, he will do it. You can face uncertainty with confidence because your hope is anchored in something unshakable. God has a perfect track record. He has never once broken a promise. The Bible says that not one word of all his good promises has ever failed. That means you can stand on his word when everything else feels unstable. If he has promised to be with you, he will never leave you. If he has promised to provide, he will supply all your needs. If he has promised to guide you, he will make your path straight. It doesn't mean the journey will always be easy or that the answers will always come quickly. But it does mean you will never have to walk through anything alone. He will be with you in the highs and the lows, the victories and the valleys. His faithfulness isn't dependent on your faithfulness. Even when you feel weak or unsure, he remains steady. Holding on to his promises requires courage. It means choosing to believe what he has spoken over what you see. It means waking up each day and saying, God, I trust you, even when I don't understand. That kind of trust pleases his heart and opens the way for his blessings to flow into your life. So wherever you are today, whether you are celebrating answered prayers or still waiting for breakthrough, remember this God is faithful. His promises are true. He has not brought you this far to leave you now. And in the end, you will look back and see how every step, every tear, and every prayer was part of a bigger story of his goodness in your life.